Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 849 of the Juicebox Podcast. On this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, I'll be speaking with Angela, who is the mother of a child with type 1 diabetes. The episode title has something to do with what you're going to hear at the very beginning and something to do with what you're going to hear at the very end, and then it'll all make sense afterwards. But Angela is just lovely, and we had a great conversation. I thought you might enjoy hearing it. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan, nor becoming bold with insulin. Don't forget to take the T1D Exchange survey. If you are a person living with type 1 diabetes and a U.S. resident, or a U.S. resident who is the caregiver of someone with type 1. The T1D Exchange is incredibly interested in your answers to a few simple questions about diabetes. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. Take the survey, support type 1 research right from your sofa. T1dexchange.org/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you by Cozy Earth. And Cozy Earth offers luxury bedding, bath, and sleepwear that you will go crazy for. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 35% site-wide at CozyEarth.com. The podcast is also sponsored today by the Omnipod 5. Learn more about Omnipod at omnipod.com/juicebox. So Angela, I just did hit record, so you know.
Okay.
And I don't feel well. So if I go over,
sorry.
don't. If I just disappear, just know that my wife's already aware that any loud thud should be investigated. So don't worry about me. Just if you hear dead silence for 5 minutes, go, oh, that's it. Scott's going on an ambulance ride, and then it's okay. We'll finish it later when he gets back.
Okay.
I don't want you to worry about it while it's happening. I can't exactly describe what may or may not have happened to me, but I think the best I can put together was that last week my lawnmower broke, and I spent a couple of hours lying on the lawn, and a day or so later I had this like bump on my hand, and I was like kind of pushed at it, and I was like, I don't know what that is. That'll be okay, And then I mean, you're married, boys.
Yes.
And so then I got another bump on a different finger, and I was like, it's probably all right. And then they started to get hard, and then they started to itch. And I thought, I probably got bit by something. Like, you know what I mean? That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't feel ill. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. And then I start getting, a few days later, some odd... Angela, you and I have known each other for 2 minutes now. It's okay if I tell you this, right? This is probably going to end up staying in the podcast. I just want you to know.
That's fine. That would be great.
If I embarrass myself with one person, everyone else might as well hear it anyway.
Yes.
So then I start getting some, what I'm going to call odd itching in places you don't want to itch. So, and it only happens if something touches my skin. So like I can go 10 hours. I don't notice an itch. I'm not in pain. But if my clothing brushes me the wrong way and starts kind of like that response, and if I go to respond to it, it just doubles and multiplies, and it's 1,000 times worse. And I could literally just scratch a hole in my skin. But if I just stop, it goes away. And so it's just this then starts going on for a couple of days. And you know how people say they spray Flonase on like sites?
Yeah.
Yeah. Angela, I don't think I'm going to bleep this out, but there was a moment in my life last week where I had to spray Flonase on my balls so that I wouldn't like go crazy.
An antihistamine might help you better.
Oh, I took those too, but I was in a panic situation. You understand? Like I had I had a fistful of Zyrtec and what's the one that makes you loopy? Benadryl. And then I took that and stood there for 3 seconds. And I was like, well, my next option is to get a knife and castrate myself or to figure out something else to do. And I thought,
don't do that.
Right. I'm not going to do that. because Kelly's obviously going to leave me one day and I'm not going to be a prize to another lady if I can't sire a child. Right. So I just took the Flonase out and I was like, I hope this is okay. And I'll tell you what, helped a lot. So
there you go.
Anyway, so after all that happened, Kelly says to me, let me see. So I was like, oh my God, I didn't think I'd get her anywhere near my balls again, but here we go. And she took a look and she goes, you got to go to urgent care, my friend. And I was like, I'll be all right. And as quickly as it flared up, it went away. And so I was like, see, it's fine. I get up the next day. And then in the afternoon, at a time where only old people nap, I was like, I got to go lay down for a minute. And I thought, well, this is it here because, you know, for me, I don't know how other people exist in the world. I don't get sick very often. And when I do, I take a nap. And when I wake up, I'm better. Like, it's just constant in my life. So I was like, I laid down, I slept for like 4 hours and I woke up and I thought, I honestly popped up like, oh, well, that'll be done now. And I was still tired. I was like, oh, hell. So I woke up yesterday morning and the bumps from my right hand, one of them appeared on my left hand. And I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to go to the doctor. So
is it poison ivy?
I go to urgent care and now I have to tell, like, you're now the second woman that I don't know that I had to tell this story to. And so I'm in a little room explaining to her, also power watching the last episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi in case I'm about to die. I wanted to see the end of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, so my kids love that show.
Oh my, and your kids and me, we watch the same things. It makes sense. And I'm in the waiting room. There's an old man bleeding from his head. I don't even care. I have my headphones on. I'm down. I'm watching Obi-Wan Kenobi. They put me back in the little room. I shut the light off in there. I'm watching it in there. Almost got through it in the thing. She comes in, she looks at my hand and she says, tell me the story. I tell her a version of the story I just told you. And I said, look, I'm so sorry to say this to you, but, I've had itching in places I wish I didn't itch. And she's like, where? And I was like, can you just imagine? And she goes, no. And I'm like, so now Angela, now I'm completely honest, which I wasn't with you a minute ago. I just said my testicles and foreskin. And she goes, oh, that must be unpleasant. And I was like, yes, thank you. And she's looking at my hands and she goes, I don't know if she goes, you're having a systemic reaction to something. And I went, yes, I figured that out with the internet, but I don't have a prescription pad. And she goes, oh, okay. You're going to be okay if I tell you need steroids? And I said, yeah, tell me, please. Like, put them in my mouth. You know what I mean? So she writes me a script. I go home. I take the 3. I'm supposed to take 3 and 3 the first day. I take 3. And 4 hours later, the bumps on my hand completely subsided.
Good.
Really crazy, right? So I was like, see, this is nothing. I just needed a little help from a pharmacist. I'm good. I take the next ones, before bed. And I wake up this morning and I'm like, I am woozy as hell. So I feel like a bobblehead doll now. As long as I hold my head still, I'm okay. But if I start to move around too much, my head wants to keep going an extra couple of inches. So anyway, that probably explains why I said testicles and foreskin already, and you haven't introduced yourself yet. But
it's okay.
Again, if I pass
I work in healthcare. I get all kinds of stories and pictures sent to me.
Do you? Oh, that's
people love to send me pictures of random things.
We were leaving the exam room and she goes, you were delightful. She called me delightful, which, I just, after that, I was like, well, this is fine. I mean, as long as I've come off well, and she's like, thanks so much. And I said, thank you for not making me show you my balls, taking it on faith. And she goes, no problem. And then we just kind of went our separate ways. Anyway. Oh my gosh. Let's hope that this episode has nothing to do with your genitals so we can keep talking. Can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Angela and I have a daughter who has type 1 diabetes.
Angela, how old is your daughter?
8.
8. When was she diagnosed?
She was 5.
5? That was 3 years
ago. So it's been about 3. It was in January of
2019?
19, yes. So it's been about 3.5 years then.
What do you want to count together?
Yeah, no, she was diagnosed the day after my son's second birthday, so it was.
So you're making this difficult. Just use the calendar. January 2019 to January 2020 is 1 year.
Yes.
Then to 2021 is 2 years. Or 2020, 2 years. 2022 is 3 years. It's June.
3.5.
Right. 3.5 years.
Yeah.
You're like, the winter solstice was here and my son was born in June. So that means.
Well, it was an all blur, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Trust me. What am I going to ask you? Well, this might be fun, huh, Angela?
No, it will be fun.
Scott is loaded on steroids and not feeling well doing a podcast. So, any autoimmune in the family previous to her?
You know, yes. Hypothyroid run. There's a couple people on I have hypothyroid, but I was negative for Hashimoto's. My husband's side of the family has a lot of hypothyroid. I think there's some thyroid cancer, but I don't know the specific kind. His grandma didn't tell me. But my husband has vitiligo. So there's definitely some autoimmune on that side.
Yeah, you guys should have had this conversation when you were dating.
The things you don't talk about. I mean, my family's all cancer and heart disease, so I'm not a winner either.
Angela's not a winner.
Yes,
it's a close option for our first title of the day. So,
yes. But there is autoimmune on our side and both sides of the family. But there was no type 1. We have a lot of type 2. So she was the first type 1. My uncle had type 1, but he was my aunt's husband, and he was more of a latta. He was in his 30s when he was diagnosed.
Gotcha.
And so I knew of diabetes, obviously, for a long time. So,
Angela, did you just yawn?
I did. I'm sorry.
No, don't. If you do it 2 more times, I'm out. Just so you know, I'm going to fall asleep. I'm here on will right now. I'm here because damn it, take this podcast very seriously. I easily could have sent you an email, and I did not. So, dear Angela, do this later in the day, please. Is what the email was going to say. But I'm like, no. So, okay. A lot. I mean, your husband's got vitiligo. You have hypo. That's not autoimmune, you don't think. Daughter has type 1. Hypothyroidism.
She does have Hashimoto's too. That was diagnosed after the type 1. But.
Look at lucky her. Okay. So did they give her something for it?
No, she's being treated. At first, she wasn't. Her thyroid level was normal for about 6 months. Well, yeah, about 6 months after her antibodies came back positive. And then they're like, well, we can check it in the future and just monitor it. But then I think about 6 months later, I was like, you know what? She's really tired. Check it. And it was high. So she started medicine after that.
I'm going to tell you something I definitely have not said yet. So, you know how when you graduate from high school, you can buy like an ad in the yearbook. It helps support the school. And you put your kid's picture in there and you mention, most people go, Mommy and Daddy are so proud of you. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Yeah. We did one for Arden full page. It's a lovely photo of her from her graduation picture in the middle and the top so that you recognize that she, is a human being. And then there are 8 or 9 photographs of Arden sleeping on different hard surfaces in our house.
That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, like countertops or on the floor or in the fetal position, but up on her knees with her head on the ground with a blanket over top of her, like passed out on a table with a winter jacket over her head. And
did she find it amusing?
Well, she did. She got a good sense of humor. And it said something like, I forget what we said, like, congratulations to our daughter Arden for graduating high school. And then at the bottom, it says, if you see our little girl or something like that sleeping at college, please wake her up. And, and it's just, and she is a wreck in these photographs. Like there's not one picture in there that you would want another human being to see. And it's just hilarious. So
that fits your personality and her personality. So that's perfect.
Oddly enough, it was Kelly's idea.
Oh, really?
She wouldn't have run with it. We ran with it when she said it out loud. She said it and we were like, we're going to do that. And, then we just went into our photos and found that there were so many pictures because we take a picture of Arden every time she falls asleep. And then we text it to her so when she wakes up, she sees it and stuff like that. But I mean, seriously, on hard countertops, kitchen tables, like under things, just anywhere. Like and Arden's fix for that has been, it's a shame because we figured it out once and then she had a side effect that we blamed on the wrong thing. So,
oh, I'm sorry.
No, please. It's been fun. These last years have been a party. We realized she had to have a T3 as well as a T4 to supplement her. When she did, boom, she was fine. Then she started losing weight oddly, and we thought it was the T3, but it was a birth control pill she was on. And we just didn't see the forest for the trees, took her off the T3, and then sometime later actually switched the birth control pill. So the weight loss stopped, and we never went and thought to ourselves, oh, I wonder if it was the T3. So then she went back into sleepy mode, and then we talked to Addie, Dr. Benito from the thyroid episode, and Addie put her back on T3, and it just lit her right back up again. It's amazing, actually.
It works for some people.
Yeah, it's just really, really fascinating. Anyway, she's good now. She's not falling asleep in the middle of the afternoon anymore. Now I am. Angela,
yes.
Now it's me. Do you think I'll turn into Spider-Man? I guess is the question we should be asking.
You know, if you figured that out, my son would be interested in knowing. So
5 minutes before we got on, I was texting with Isabel. Are you on the Facebook page?
Yes.
Isabel from the Facebook page. And she's just wonderful and helps me manage the page. And I was telling her, like, you're not going to get a lot out of me today because I think I'm dying. And, I explained briefly, and she said, hopefully you'll turn into Spider-Man and let me know if you can, like, shoot a web later. And I said, I really just want the abs. And she said, but you'll get the great suit too. And I said, if I get abs, I'm not wearing a shirt for like a year.
Why would you?
I just wouldn't. I'm going to walk around and be like those kids on Instagram do. I'm going to be like, hey, look, see? All right, Angel. So your kid's diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2019, just after Christmas, which is a lovely gift for the new year. Mm-hmm. What are those first days like? How did it present? What did you do? I've decided that today I'm going to read to you things that have been sent to me about the Omnipod 5. Here's an adult who says that they were on a medication that would normally cause them to have to turn their basal up to 150%. But with Omnipod 5, nice stable line, she woke up in the morning with a blood sugar of 118. This is from a mom about her son. 9-month post-diagnosis appointment, 2 months since starting the Omnipod 5, says they're blown away, legit was speechless. Diagnosed at an A1C of 11.5, was last checked 6 months ago, 6.2. They switched to Omnipod 5, went back to the doctor, weren't sure what to expect. A1C was 5.7. Omnipod.com/juicebox. The Omnipod 5 is an algorithm-based automated insulin pump. Do you understand? It talks to your Dexcom CGM, finds out what your blood sugar is, and based on your settings, makes adjustments to your insulin. Now, these are just two random people, and obviously their results may very well be different than yours. But I mean, come on, check it out, right? Omnipod.com/juicebox. Go learn more. Omnipod 5 is the only tubeless automated insulin delivery system that integrates with the Dexcom G6 CGM, and it uses Smart Adjust technology to automatically adjust your insulin every 5 minutes, helping to protect against highs and lows without multiple daily injections. And Omnipod 5 is FDA approved for ages 2 and above. Because Omnipod 5 is a pharmacy benefit, you can get started today without the 4-year durable medical equipment contract that comes with most insulin pumps, even if you're currently in warranty right now with another system. Omnipod.com/juicebox. That's where you'll learn more, get started, and be able to see the full safety and risk information, as well as clinical trial claims. All right, now we're going to talk about some seriously comfortable sheets that I'm sleeping on from Cozy Earth. I'm going to go right to the website, cozyearth.com. You know, Cozy, COZYEARTH, cozyearth.com. Here's what I'm met with. Lovely bedding, women's and men's sleep and loungewear, and look at these bath towels. My goodness. Now, I am at the moment sleeping on a set of sheets from Cozy Earth. Actually, they're bamboo sheets made of viscose bamboo, but I'm eyeing up these bath towels. Premium waffle bath. Do I want the waffle or the plush? Waffle's nice. Premium bath towels. They look nice. But those would match the decor in my bathroom. Oh, look at that mat. Okay. Listen, you're going to get lost shopping at CozyEarth.com, and that cart's going to get pretty full. So how about this? Why don't I give you an offer code that will get 35% off of all of your items? Just use Juicebox at checkout at CozyEarth.com. And that way you can get towels and sheets, and I don't even want to look at these. I don't want to share too much here with you. I don't wear pajamas, but they also have like shirts and tops and pants, some nice loungewear. I have to look at this too. All right, CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code Juicebox. There are links in the show notes of your audio player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Omnipod, Cozy Earth, and all of the sponsors. When you click on my links, you're supporting the show.
Well, I knew something was wrong probably 2 to 3 months before. She wasn't acting herself. It wasn't the urination or thirst that I noticed first. It was just, she was just tired. She was cranky, and that's not her at all. And I even talked to her school. I'm like, is there something going on? And they're like, no. And we thought she was going through a growth spurt because she was having leg cramps at night. Turned out it was blood sugar issues. And then she had chapped lips, but it was winter. And then she just wasn't acting herself. I knew. And then we went on vacation after Christmas, and it was in North Carolina. So it was cold. I mean, relatively. She kept asking for water. And that's when I was really concerned. And she wet the bed twice. And I said something to my husband. I'm like, I'm really concerned. And he's like, it's dry up here. And that's our running joke, because he kept saying, no, I'm thirsty too. And she probably wet the bed because we're in a house that she's not familiar with.
Because people pee themselves in unfamiliar houses constantly.
Yeah, well, because she was 5. So, in his mind, she just didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So I didn't think, and I was still was concerned. So then it was the new year. My son's birthday party at my mom's house was that Saturday. And my sister-in-law is a nurse too. And she's like, Catherine just doesn't seem like herself. Because she's usually like, she'll talk, and she's just a bubbly girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm concerned. And the next day, she was begging me for water at bedtime. Okay. And I looked at my husband. I'm like, I think she has type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
And he's like, no. And she had an upcoming appointment with her pediatrician that Wednesday.
Right.
He's like, no. He's like, I'll take her tomorrow. I'm like, no, I'm concerned. He's like, would you? And I made her get on the scale. She lost 4 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, I'm concerned. And he's like, would you be happy if I went to the CVS and got a glucometer? And I said, yes. Mm-hmm. So he went and got one, and he took her blood sugar, and it said hi. Then he cried, and then off to All Children's we went. So that was fun. And then when we got to the hospital, like at first we thought that they didn't take us seriously, because we went in and I was like, we checked my daughter's blood sugar. It just said hi. They're like, okay, have a seat. Like, okay. But then they came out with a cart, because apparently it was in like DK alert. So they brought us back. They immediately checked her blood sugar, put an IV, and then they were like, hey, they kept asking me, well, what made you check your blood sugar? I'm like, look, I'm a physician assistant. I've had experience in endo. Yeah. And then it just changed. And it was just like, oh, okay. Then they were trying to ask me, like, has she been sick? Has she been on steroids? And I'm like, no. Like at this point, I know what it is. And right. I know most parents at that point didn't know what it was. I knew. I mean, I knew before we went to the hospital.
Yeah, sure.
So So then she was just so mad because it was late at night. It was like 8 o'clock. So she's already tired. We have like a 2-year-old sleeping on my husband and she's getting an IV. She looked at my husband with the most evil look. Like, how dare you let these people put an IV in me? But she wasn't in DKA, luckily. Mm-hmm. So they finally got orders from the endo to give her insulin. They kept her overnight. The endo came in and was very nice when she was like, okay, who has experience with endo? And I'm like, me. And so her explanation to me obviously isn't what it would be to a parent that doesn't even know what type 1 diabetes is. Right. So she kind of told me what insulin and things. They made sure my husband
stop crying.
Give crying, but give the shots, and the CDE came in. But I look back at that experience and like, I'm in healthcare, so I know more than most people. And I just think to myself, like, a parent that didn't work in healthcare, parent that didn't know what type 1 diabetes was to begin with, like how overwhelming it was overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
And I kind of know stuff.
Right. No, I understand.
So I couldn't imagine someone who doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
So, but on the flip side, it was kind of like, oh, you got this. I'm like, but me working an adult endocrinology 12 or 10 years, probably 8 years at that, is different than taking home a child with a 5-year-old.
Right.
But so the nurse kept trying to make sure we got the right insulin at the pharmacy, which I appreciate because she wanted to make sure whatever insulin she sent was approved. Mm-hmm. So we didn't get discharged till 8 o'clock that night, and my kids are hungry. And what made me mad was they didn't even bother to check my daughter's blood sugar before we left. And we got to the car and it was low. But I did bring that up to the endocrinologist. Like, they kind of have to check that before they leave the hospital.
Angela, fair is fair. She's had diabetes for 5 hours now and you have a meter. So you don't need any more help. You're good.
Yeah, who knows? But it was just overwhelming at first, just because I remember sitting in the hospital and I was just like, how am I going to give you the life you deserve? Like, that was what was already running through my head. Like, I have to get you back in school, right? Because she loves school. And my thing was, she could not leave a Friday and not ever see her friends again. Mm-hmm. So that was part of our next step, which luckily we did get her back in her preschool. But that was a battle. It was just like, you don't even realize all the things you have to advocate for until you do.
Yeah.
And I try to do it in a nice way.
Well, that's good. I am a big believer in realizing, especially at a young age, that you're going to be with these people for a very long time, and you don't need them looking at you like you're a crazy person. Even if you're not being crazy, they're going to think you are. I can look back on the things I was saying when Arden was going into kindergarten and be like, oh, those poor people must have been like, what is wrong with him? Like, plenty of kids have been through here with diabetes. We know what we're doing. They have that feeling, and they really didn't. But
it's, you have to, what I even said to my daughter the other day, because she has some at her camp who knows her very well and they do excellent. She's like, but the kids in these classes don't know about diabetes. And she's used to having the same kids who have known her forever. Mm-hmm. I was like, Catherine, but you're making a positive impact because now they know what diabetes is. So you have now made it so the next kid that they encounter that has diabetes easier on them. And I just feel like you have to have that mindset. Mistakes happen, but how you present it is different. I would hate to make somebody feel so bad about a mistake that they don't want to take another type 1 diabetic. Mm-hmm. And that's just my mindset. Yeah. And I know not all parents are like that, but mistakes, I make mistakes. Sure. So how could I expect other people not to make mistakes? Yeah. That's just kind of how I am.
I think that in general, when you see people get like super upset because something went wrong, it's understandable. You know what I mean? Like, it's a frightening thing. You're picturing the worst outcome, and some people fly off the handle. And I got revved up at my daughter's school when she was, in kindergarten. But it wasn't like I didn't go 0 to 1,000. I tried really hard to get them to pay attention and for them to take things seriously. And then one day something actually went wrong the way I told them it was going to. And I used that situation to kind of force them into doing the right thing.
And you have to sometimes.
Right.
And I think times have changed from when your daughter was diagnosed. She didn't have a CGM when she was in kindergarten, did she?
No. Nothing like that.
So now the nurses, at least my daughter's nurse, who is fantastic, her biggest advocate, follows her Dexcom. Mm-hmm. Not to say all nurses do that, but right. I think the technology has definitely given them peace of mind too.
Yeah, there are definitely still there are people who don't want the responsibility. And
I get it.
Yeah. By responsibility, I mean liability. And so they say no. They don't want to miss something, and you turn to them and go, and this is also reasonable. Hey, my kid had a seizure. You were supposed to be paying attention. And, like now my cell phone is like, if I'm not aware of it, you can yell at me legally. And like, I get why people stay out of it.
And actually, I've heard nurses say that before because they didn't want, what if the person's home and their blood sugar's at, like, where does your responsibility
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's only going to take one wacko to go, sure, we were all asleep, but you have my kids follow on your phone and you're a nurse. And, I get it. I do get it.
And I see people's posts sometimes and their expectations of other people. I'm like, oh my, I just ignore that.
Yeah. Well, I agree. So, so we get home and first of all, it's such a fun part of this. It's not fun. Fun's the wrong word. I am on medication, by the way. And so it's it's a telling part of the story where your husband's the one like, there's no problem. I'll get a meter. And then he falls apart when he sees the number. Like you can see him protecting himself even in the decision to say, oh, come on, it's fine. It's dry here. I'm thirsty too. Like, let's not find out our kid has diabetes.
You know, he is the most protective, but in different ways. Like if the kids bump themselves, he like his heart just like rips out of his. But like if there's stuff like that, he's just, I don't know. It's not that he ignores it. I just think he's trying to protect his heart, I guess. But he's very protective in other parts that I'm like, they're okay. They'll live. So we're different in that part, but he doesn't work in healthcare. So
I listen, I appreciate it. I really do. I understand how it goes. So she gets home. How do you set up care? Like you got her back to school really quickly, but how did you accomplish
it took
that?
3 weeks. So we didn't get her Dexcom for 3 weeks, and how a life changer that was. Well, luckily, her school that she was at, her preschool, it wasn't hooked to an elementary school. She had been there for 3 years. And the owner, luckily, it wasn't a big company, so the owner had more say in it. But she was on vacation. And of course, nobody wants to do things when she's on vacation. Mm-hmm. So we had to wait till she was back from vacation. And then it was just back and forth with their insurance company, because then their insurance company was saying things that didn't make sense out of concern. So we did get her back at school, and I went and trained the staff. My husband and I went and explained the diabetes, and luckily her 2 teachers were amazing. And the staff already knew Catherine for 3 years, and light bulbs went off at her school, her teachers too, because now things made sense. Mm-hmm. So they're not equipped to give out medication. And I was like, look, I will come every day at lunch and give her shot. So that's what I did. I made a deal with my job because I worked close by. Mm-hmm. I left. I set an alarm. I left, went, got her, gave her a shot. 20 kids watched her get a shot every day. And then, we did that for 8 months before she went to kindergarten.
Okay.
Well, I went and gave her shot, but it was the best.
It worked, right?
It worked.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, did I want to give that responsibility to anybody else? Like, I remember her endo was like, well, they can't give it. And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, there's always a way. I'm like, I'll go. At that point, she only trusted me and her dad to give her shots anyway, you know, so
wow,
it worked out.
That's very interesting. And I see people do it. And I think it, you know, if you can accomplish it, like, I mean, you're lucky you worked close enough by, your job was nice about it. It's the easiest way to get through the first thing. Cause what are you going to do? Train, you know, in a preschool situation just for a couple of months to get you through, you know?
I wouldn't want to give them that responsibility. Right. Would they do it if they were legally able to? Probably, because they liked my daughter enough, but I didn't want to give them that. I didn't want them to.
Did it work out? Were there any issues with it that way?
No, they did have one. The one thing is, you know, my daughter relied too much on Dexcom to tell her how she feels. Okay. So, like, once they had a water day, and obviously the Dexcom is going to be intermittent at that point. And I had said, you know, Catherine, if you don't feel good, please tell the teachers because the Dexcom's not working. But she
was in and out of like a body of water, you're saying? So
they had like a water day. Gotcha. So the Dexcom was kind of off to the side. You know, it's not going to work as well in water. So I picked her up and she's like, I'm thirsty. And she was low. And I didn't blame the teachers. I did tell them the next day she was low. And they're like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no. But she also has to realize if she doesn't feel good, she needs to tell you guys because she can't always rely on the Dexcom, and she is still young. But if you don't feel good, say something. But she didn't say anything. Yeah, well. You know, but I mean, the kids, it's funny. Preschool kids were really awesome to her. Like, they asked great questions, and I love that age group. But they all like they would see her get a shot. They would see her get her check her blood sugar, and they all asked like really appropriate. They asked better questions than adults. Like, okay, like one kid would see me give the shot, and then I'd put the needle in the sharp stem. He's like, "Oh, so is that where you put the blood?" I'm like, "Huh?" He's like, "The blood that you're taking." He thought I was not giving her a shot. He thought I was drawing out blood, but I could see from a 4 or 5 year old's perspective how he could see that. So it was nice talking to the kids because they were all very protective of her. They were very kind at that age group, but it worked out well. I mean, we had not issues and not things that the teachers did wrong, but like just sometimes they would overcorrect the lows, which, as you know, that's common. Like they would see that they would treat her and then the next reading would go lower. So then they would get worried and give her more. Yeah. And I'm like, it takes some time, you know, but that's just stuff that you learn. And they were just scared.
It also happens to everybody, honestly. Like
it does.
Yeah, no one's not been in that situation and been like, why don't we just eat a little more, please?
Yeah. So once she got like 2 juice boxes, I'm like, oh, this is going to end up bad. But you know, it's a learn. But did I yell at them? No,
of course.
It was just like, if you're ever worried, just manually check her.
Did you have the same success moving into first grade and I guess second grade now?
Oh, kindergarten. Oh, it was funny because when we went for orientation for signing up, because actually she was diagnosed the same week that we had to register her for kindergarten. And here we're worried about that. So we said something to the assistant principal and he was like, oh, it's okay. Brandy, the nurse, is great. And she has other diabetics and don't worry. But I couldn't talk to her beforehand. So it was like a week or two before school. I was in contact, so I had to drop off supplies and stuff, and she's great. And she's like, is it okay if I follow her on Dexcom? And I was like, absolutely. But then I felt bad because they didn't tell me who her kindergarten teacher was. So it was like 2 days before school, we got to meet the kindergarten teacher. And I felt so bad because I walk up to her and I was like, I just want to let you know, my daughter has type 1 diabetes. She has a Dexcom. I met the nurse. And here's a bag of snacks just in case she goes low. And just a look on her poor face because she never had anybody with diabetes before. Yeah. And if I would have known ahead of time who the teacher was, I could have prepared her more.
Right.
But I didn't. But the first day of school, her nurse texts me and says, your daughter's asked if I had ever done this before. And I was like, good, Catherine. She knows to ask the right questions. But no, we've had a really good experience. I mean,
Good.
Her kindergarten teacher made an error once, and she felt bad, but it happens because she was doing some type of math project, but it was marshmallow. And the kids got to eat the marshmallows afterwards. She forgot to say something to the nurse. So suddenly we see her blood sugar go super high. Mm-hmm. And the nurse goes down there. She's like, I'm so sorry. That happens.
I'm not going to teach the kids to count.
Yes, exactly. She's like, all the other kids ate the marshmallows. She forgot to say something to the nurse. But we've had a really good experience. And I think communication, and I'm not saying every nurse is great, mm-hmm. but I think communication is key. I mean, when something happens, she takes it more personal than me. I'm like, it happens. We move on.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I understand. It's cool. So how about your husband? How did he settle in with it?
Over communicate. The Dexcom took him a while to not overreact to every data point. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I hear people talk about it. Yeah.
So he used to I'm like, Ryan, sometimes you just kind of have to see where it lies. You can't overreact because if you treat, it could have just leveled out. So it took him a while to realize that. But now he's just like, I'm just going to let it watch, which 2 years ago he would have freaked out.
When you say overreact, he was overreacting with carbs?
To lows. Okay. He just would freak out, when you see that double down arrow. Sure. And I'm like, just watch it.
But even if it was double down and 250, he was in a panic.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is like the pre-bolus. Like he's gotten better with pre-bolus, but he was always terrified of the pre-bolus and her go low. I'm like, but we're in a house with things we can treat. Like it was just, people. I think people are always more afraid of the lows, which I understand being afraid of the lows than the highs. And just trying to teach him. But he does excellent. He's the warrior of the group. She was on camp trip 2 weeks ago, and I was busy seeing patients, so I really wasn't following her Dexcom very much. Mm-hmm. And she went low, but she wasn't responding to his calls. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I could see Scott do this. So he drove an hour to where she was for camp, and then she answered the phone. And so he didn't tell her he was outside. Yeah,
he just turned around and went back.
No, because they were about to leave. Mm-hmm. So she said that she got on the bus and she looks over and was like, "There's my dad." So, but he just was worried.
No,
so.
I understand. Well, you listen. You start doing the math and you think there's an amount of time I have here, and if she doesn't answer the phone, then I didn't do anything, and it seems like a special situation to me. I respect what he did there.
No, I did. And it was really nice that he did that. But it was very typical Ryan thing to do. Well, I'm just going to go to her. She doesn't answer her phone.
I think that's very nice. I know you probably have heard that story, but I was in the shower once when Arden wasn't answering while she was at school. And I panicked, dried myself off, put whatever clothing I could find on, went outside, drove to the school, was going through the front door, about to tell the person why I needed to be there. And Arden texted and she's like, I had a juice. And I looked at the woman through the window and I went, sorry to bother you. And I walked out right back out of the room.
I actually told my husband that story and he was like, yeah, that would be me.
Yeah, I probably looked a little crazy in that moment. That's why I got out of there. I was like, let me just leave. Maybe she'll forget this. You know what I mean?
I just think it's funny that she saw him at a stoplight and was like, my dad was here.
Yeah.
And he... she wasn't even surprised.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. Well, that's good though. She believes he's going to be there for her too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's very cool.
He's the protective one.
Well, that's what about your other child? Is there anything going on there?
He assumes that he's going to get diabetes, which is sad because he was 2. I mean, I check him periodically. I've been on the fence about TrialNet. I'll probably do it, but he's kind of as you've talked about before, like temperament for different kids is different.
Mm-hmm.
His is different. He would not handle it as well. But he only remembers his sister as having diabetes. So he always makes comments like, oh, when I get diabetes, can I have a Dexcom? Or he just assumes he's going to.
Have you told him that it's completely possible that it won't happen?
Yeah, I do. I'm like, Owen, we hope that you don't. But if you do, it will be okay. But I check him periodically if I'm worried. We'll probably do the trial net. It's just we got the home kit once and it was a disaster because we didn't get enough blood.
Right.
So, and then COVID happened, and then it was on hold. So
okay,
it was just I was on the fence because I'm like, it is a genetic. I'm pro it, but I was like, he's already anxious about it. Part of me was like, is it fair to give him his genetic possibility if that's not something he wants to know? So right. But I probably will do it. But.
Well, yeah, it's a personal decision, that's for sure. Have you asked him if he'd want to know if he could find out?
He's just turned 5, but I haven't asked him.
It seems too early to me. But
yeah, because it's kind of like it was hard to ask him that. But
right, especially
if it was reverse, Catherine would be like, absolutely. Well, but different kids are temperament is different.
Yeah, you'll handle it the right way. I mean, it's just I just think it's. I don't know. I guess he's young. It makes sense, but it's sad that he's thinking he's going to definitely get sick. You know what I mean?
know that's he only sees it as, and it was so weird that they pick up on things that you wouldn't think. Like we were at a park one day, like a water, like just splash park. Mm-hmm. And he comes up to me later and he's like, I think you need to check my blood sugar. I didn't feel well. And then my heart sank like, what? And it was fine.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's like, he put together him not feeling good
with having diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess he sees and hears enough to warrant that.
How old was your husband when he got vitiligo? Do you know?
You know what? He was in his 30s. It was
too late for you to return him?
Yeah. it was a stressful event. I don't remember. It was probably about 4. He's 38 now. So I would say like 32, 33 on his hands, a little bit on his feet. He went to derm. They're like, it's autoimmune, not much to do about it. But I think he has underlying hypothyroidism, but I'm not his doctor. And he's like, my doctor says I'm fine. I'm like, okay.
How long have you guys been married?
12 years. We've been together for almost 17.
17. Okay. I was just wondering because, so wait, his doctor says he's okay. What does that mean? Did they test for
Well,
it?
I specifically asked him to tell his doctor that he has a family history of autoimmune thyroid disease and his daughter has Hashimoto's, and I know a little thing or two, and his TSH has been borderline on the high side. Not enough that, hey, you need medication, but to observe. And he asked his doctor, can you check for Hashimoto's? And his doctor was like, we don't normally check for that. And I'm like, but he didn't press the issue.
Isn't that funny? It's a simple blood test. Like
I know.
You're going for other blood tests at your well visits. Like just check a box.
I know.
Yeah.
But he also doesn't press the issue. He's like, they said no. And I'm like, okay.
That's the wrong attitude, but I'm not him.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, he did say, do you want me to go to endocrinologist? I'm like, no. But I look at his labs.
When you said his TSH was borderline, what was it?
It was like in the 3 range, which I kept it. It's on the higher side of normal.
I would treat that. I'm not a doctor, but I would.
I would if he was diagnosed. And I would as a practitioner, but I'm not his doctor.
Why don't you just slip him a couple of Synthroid for a week or 2? And when he starts feeling better, go, hey, guess what? I know you can't legally you shouldn't give people drugs that they're not expecting. I'm teasing. Yeah, but
I know.
But he would definitely feel better in ways that he might not even be perceiving as a problem.
Well, yeah. I mean,
is he snippy?
Especially he sleeps all. Yeah, he is. He's tired a lot.
Okay.
But
I said,
he says
I'm sorry.
He says
Angela?
I like to diagnose him with things.
Well,
so
listen, I apologize for talking over you. I said snippy, not sleepy.
oh, snippy. Occasionally.
Yeah,
but no.
and sleepy.
Yeah.
Why would he not want it? It's a stupid little pill. You just pop it in your mouth and you wake up.
No, he wouldn't be opposed to taking it if someone told him other than his wife.
Oh, I see. Couldn't you tell him while you weren't wearing a shirt? Doesn't that work better?
Maybe.
That's how my wife got a hot tub. So, like she's like, should we get a hot tub? I said, no, expensive. Don't do that. I said it no for a long time. Then one day she just said it coming out of the bathroom. And I was like, it makes sense to me. So yeah, I mean, if you want to get a hot tub, we should look into it. And I've seen her boobs a lot. And I was still like, yeah, I think you're right. I think you should just, break out of the shower, drying your hair and go, hey, don't you think we should maybe get your TSH tested again? And he'll probably be like, yeah, I think so. Anyway.
Luckily, it hasn't gone any higher. So I was like, I'll fight one battle at a time.
I'm sorry that you feel like your life is one battle at a time.
No, but it's funny which I don't know you personally, but sometimes guys will listen to somebody that's not their wife telling them things. So if he had somebody else say, hey, Ryan, I think you need to get this looked at. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
I hear you. Why don't you write a note, stick it in his pocket when he goes to the doctor? Like if
should.
Like you're sending a 4-year-old for bread in the 50s. You know what I mean?
Please do this.
My wife said for you to read this note.
I don't want to. It's probably a reason he doesn't have me go to his appointments.
I wasn't allowed to read it. She said it's not for me, but it's for you.
Just slip it in there. Yeah.
It's funny.
No, he's a good guy, though.
Remember when you're too young to recognize that people my wife used to get sent for cigarettes. Like she had to walk across town with a pocket full of change to buy cigarettes for her parents. Like when she was
my mom said that she used to do that with her parents or her dad.
I had to go to a cigarette machine in a diner down the block from my house. My dad would be like, here's quarters, get me cigarettes. And I was like, all right. And I just went and got them. And then I would steal some of his quarters, play a video game. And then I'd come back. And I did across a major thoroughfare to make that happen. Just so you know, like I'm talking about like massive amounts of traffic going in 2 different directions so he could have cigarettes. And it was not like.
But you lived a little bit. I did survive.
I did survive. One time. I look back on this story, Angela, all the time, and I wonder if it was my imagination. But my friends and I were crossing this busy road, and you couldn't make it all the way across. So you kind of like traversed the first couple of, lanes that were going in one direction, say to my right. And then you got into the center lane, which was the beginning of a turning lane. You just prayed nobody had to turn. You stopped there and waited for the traffic going left to clear so you could run the rest of the way. And I know modern parents are like, what is happening? But this was a fairly common thing in my life. So we all run across the first 2 lanes and I stop a little late. And when I turn back, I felt like the truck went by and like hit the tip of my nose. It felt like I don't know if it really did or if it was just close enough that it felt like it. But when I turned my head back and opened my eyes, there was a tractor trailer going past me. And it felt like it was a half an inch from my face. It could have been 3 feet. I have no idea. Right. But that scared the crap out of me. I was like, oh, I just almost got hit by a truck. And still, I told my parents that story and I was still sent across the street to get cigarettes.
That's what I was wondering. Did you go back and say I almost died for your cigarettes? And
well, did you hear me talking about my balls earlier? I, of course, told somebody the story because I love talking about things. So I came right back. I was like, oh, my God, guess what almost happened? And it was back then. Like, they didn't go, oh, well, you're never crossing that road again. They were like, well, be more careful. Yeah. No one.
Your fault.
No one said walk out of the way to the intersection where you could use a traffic light because that was inconvenient. So... You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the 70s and 80s. That's all. Yeah. Nobody cared. If I died, they had 2 more kids. They would have been like, that's fine. Like
was that a sad truth?
I was adopted too. So they were probably like, whatever. We already did a good thing.
we adopted him.
He's turning out to be kind of a pain in the ass anyway. So like, whatever. But that's anyway, funny. It's just, it's a different world. But all right, anyway, I'm sorry. If your husband ever listens to this, dude, get your TSH checked. If it's over 2, take Synthroid. You'll feel better. That's it. It's very simple.
He won't listen.
I bet he wants your daughter to listen, I bet.
Yeah, she was the one that told me to come on.
To come on the podcast? Really? How come?
Yeah. I don't know. I was like, when you had posted about people, and she's like, you should go. I was like, fine, sure. I don't know.
Cool. Well, but for no real reason other than just to tell her story?
I don't know, because I was like, I guess. I mean, she's pretty, she's very intuitive and smart person. And I think she thinks it helps other people. She's just that type of person. If it helps, she's okay with it.
Yeah. Well, that's very nice of her. For her, her story to get told like that. And for this, do you listen a lot to the show?
I do. I drive a lot. So I put you podcast. I enter between driving and when driving, I either put music on or your podcast.
That's what I do. I like listening to people talk when I'm driving. Actually, when I'm working around the house or in a lot of different situations. I've actually, as I get older, Angela, I notice I don't go to music as much anymore.
Recently I was putting on some like 90s music and my kids made me feel so old. They're like, I forget what it was, just like old. It was like TLC or something, but they made me feel like it was like 100 years ago. And I'm like, guys, no.
Were you chasing waterfalls and the kids didn't dig it?
I know. Yeah, I think so. And my son was obsessed with Gloria Estefan that was the only song that would make him stop crying. Oh. He loved Turn the Beat Around. He loved it. I don't know why. He would start crying. We'd put Turn the Beat Around and he would stop crying.
When Cole was a baby, he wouldn't go to sleep. He had to go to sleep a certain way. And when he was like first born, like the first 9-10 months of his life, I had to go to where a computer was in my house and lay him across my legs, stomach down, and rub his back and play Blackbird over and over again by the Beatles. And he'd go to sleep.
Colic is terrible.
Yeah.
Like my son had colic and it was just like the witching hour of just it was terrible.
No, I understand. You're like, oh, so glad we had a family. That's how I felt this morning when Kelly's like, can you take the dogs out? And I was like, I don't feel good. And the dogs, I heard that she did not try hard to get Basil to go out last night before bed. Like I was upstairs woozy and I heard her do the, Basil, do you want to go outside? No? Okay. And I was like, he's going to pee on something. That dog is unstable.
So she asked the dog if he wanted to go.
Yeah. I'm like, Kelly, you just like kind of like move him to the door and he goes outside and he pees and he comes back. And she's like, well, he didn't want to. I told her this morning, I was like, the effort you saved last night cost me this morning. And she's like, And I realized what she meant was better you than me.
That's exactly what it meant.
And I was like, okay.
It was, well, that's your problem now.
Yeah. You took a you problem, tried to make it a me problem, but I was able to take a me problem, make it a you problem. So you lose. And I was like, oh, great.
No, the dog is the least of our concerns. It's our cat that like meows in the morning when he just wants people up just because.
Our older dog now just barks at the door when he wants to go outside, which is great, except he wants to go outside early in the morning sometimes. And even as you like yell to him, like, hey, man, I hear you. I'm on my way. He's so old. He can't hear you talking. And so when you get there and he makes eye contact with you, he's like, oh, you're here. Like he really doesn't hear you coming anymore. It's crazy how long he's living. And he's old. He's gray and he's lost weight, but he just keeps eating and going and going. And so he looks happy and, I'm happy for him. I just wish he could sleep till 9. He's like my mom, who's like, I was up at 4 today. I'm like, why?
My dad was like that before he passed. He was up at like 4:30.
Wait, like my dog or like my mom? How was your dad?
Probably both.
Oh, okay.
But he would just wake up early, and it's like, but you're not doing anything. So then he'd fall asleep at like 7:30 at night because there was this vicious cycle of just
you can't help it. How old was he when he passed?
62.
I was going to say you must have been young. You're in your 30s. How did
he have lung cancer?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's something. How long did he have it for?
Well, we assume a long time, but he was one of those big believers. If you don't go to the doctor, there's nothing wrong with you.
I heard that story about your husband a minute ago.
Yeah. So don't tell me I married him. No, but we knew, and he even said, he knew that there was something wrong. But time that he finally went to the hospital, from diagnosis to his death was like a month.
Yeah,
so he had it for a long time, and it's just like if you just went to the doctor, you probably could have,
Is your mom alive?
Yeah, she's alive.
How's she doing that he passed?
Good. It comes in waves, I tell people that with grief all the time. So it's just weird being alone,
Yeah.
But she does pretty well otherwise. But she's independent. She's still working, which I told her is good because otherwise you just sit and dwell. But,
right. I make sure to tell Kelly a couple of times a year when she's mean, I go, "You're going to regret this when I'm dead." Because I want her to feel bad after I die. Just
really?
A little bit, once or twice. No, I don't know.
No, I always tell my house, I was like, if I die, just get remarried. He's like, "Oh, I'm not doing that again." I'm like,
well, a shining endorsement for you, Angela.
Yeah, well, no, but it's just like, I'm like, "You're wrong." He's like, no. But, you always think that, especially when you have kids and stuff, it's just like, and then like when you have a kid with a chronic issue, it's like, who would I give them to if something happened? Like, not everybody can like the things that go through your mind differently.
Did you pick someone?
When you, kind of, I had to get it in writing, but my sister-in-law is a nurse, so she would probably do the best if,
I hear you. We had to pick somebody too. It's a weird decision to make where you're just like, who would almost medically, I was like, is this a decision you make like on medical, or is it a decision you make on like support and emotion? Like who would be better in what aspect?
It is hopefully she knows that she's going to get my kids or something. It'll be between her and my mom, but my mom's like, I'm older. So,
not long before she's going to start napping it, in weird times of day.
Yeah, but I would say like, retrospectively, once Catherine was diagnosed, it made sense to my sister-in-law at the birthday party the day before she was diagnosed. She's like, it makes sense now because she was trying to talk to my daughter. Catherine downed a Capri Sun, asked Megan, my sister-in-law, for another drink, and she's like, she just had a drink. She literally took the Capri Sun that my sister-in-law was drinking out of her hand and drank it. And now she's like, that makes sense. Now, because she's like, she would never do something like that,
right?
But she was just that thirsty. But she's always like looking up stuff for diabetes and stuff related to her. So she's a good support. Nice.
That's great.
We have been blessed in other ways that we have people that actually care. But I will say, I think it's a two-way street, because when I did say something to her preschool teacher later, because I would always see posts about people would be rejected from preschool after they were diagnosed. So I said something and I'm like, I just want to really thank you for allowing Catherine to come back, because that would have not been okay. It would have been like another hit to being diagnosed.
Yeah. I agree.
She said, and she was like, at that point, it was a parental decision. If it was a different parent that was eccentric or neurotic or anything like that, I wouldn't have taken the risk. But you were very calm. You came in, you explained it to us, and it made us comfortable.
Right.
So that's why it's like, you have to have that communication. And I don't know. I just feel like some people just like, I make mistakes, and I'm not saying justifying every mistake, but I think I don't want to make it to where someone feels so terrible that they never want another kid that has diabetes. I would hate that. And you're probably the same way. Like, you would be like, it's okay. This is a learning experience.
Right.
That's what I always tell them, especially if they overtreat a low. Just next time, do it this way.
Please just try to remember this the next time, because there's going to be a next time, and I need you to
there is going to be a next time. The one time that her nurse did it wasn't even the nurse's fault. It was actually my daughter's fault. She went into her office and started crying. And I called her. I'm like, first of all, that's not your fault. Second of all, Catherine's going to get in trouble. And it happens, but she took it to heart because she cared.
Well, it's nice. And it's nice too that they recognized that it would have been a lot to pile on top of another thing and take the kid's school from her and everything else. But it sounds too like if you were the kind of parent that they thought was going to be a problem, they might have said no. So
and I get it.
Yeah, I understand too.
So, but no,
really,
you have to take the positive with the negative, and we're all learning as we go.
How are you guys making out with care? Do you mind talking about like what your goals are, what A1Cs look like, stuff like that?
Oh yeah, that's fun. She has been less than 6.1 or less for the last almost 3 years.
Wow.
She's on the Omnipod Eros. Her insurance won't cover any other one. I know that Omnipod 5 just came out, but that's a battle with the insurance. I'll fight another day.
Okay.
Day with her. She has the Dexcom. We actually do the untethered method, and I started that last year because we swim a lot. Because we live in the South, we have a pool, we swim a lot, and it was around June. She had 3 pod failures in 24 hours. She just cried, and the last one, because she hates her Omnipod change. She's gotten a little bit better, but it would give her the ticks, give her anxiety. She tries to guess when it's going to come based on the ticking, which, the ticks are different every.
Yeah, I'm laughing because Arden still does that. She
cringes, and everybody, we have to pause everything because she has to hear the clicks. So we have to turn off the TV. Like, it's a whole ordeal. So she had like a third. I think one was actually a change. Then she had a pod failure. Then it was like 8:00 at night. Her blood sugar went to 400. The pod was bad. I think we might have had a bad batch or something. But I was just like, it's 8:00 at night. So I just gave her some of my long acting. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'll fight this another day. I need to sleep, but I don't want her to go to DKA because she's excessively. So then my husband, which I did read a little bit about untethered before that, he's like, can't we just give her some some basal and then do the rest in the pump? And I was like, well, yes, we can. So I said something to my daughter the next day, and I was like, look, we can give you a shot once a day so you have some basal, because her biggest thing is the pod. If something happens with the pod, it interrupts her day. She has to stop what she's doing. She has to get, it's a big ordeal when you're a kid. So I was like, let's try it for 1 week. I give you some basal. We'll do the pod for everything else. After a week, if you're okay with it, we'll continue. After a week, she's like, my anxiety is less. So we've done it for a year. I do lose some control with that because there's more variation. There's more adjustments being made. But she's on such little basal during the day that if something happens with her pod, I can just give her a shot to correct her, and then I could change her pod when it's convenient. Like, someone doesn't have to stop to go to school,
Right.
It gives her more peace of mind.
Cool.
And it's been a year and she likes it and she hasn't fought me on it. And I'm a big proponent. I can't take the disease from her. I see adults that are burnt out, and I use their stories to help me with Catherine. And so if I can't, I've told her, I'm like, you don't have to be on a pump. If you want to, I'm negotiable with certain things. You have to take your insulin. I don't care if it's a pump. I don't care if it's pen. You have to, that's non-negotiable, but that is your choice. With the Dexcom, she has a love-hate relationship with it. I do give her breaks. And because she was having it's funny that you mentioned earlier about the Flonase, that when she first had it, she had terrible reactions. terrible. Like, so it was terrible. But we finally have the Flonase and some skin barrier. Well, sometimes she just doesn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we make a deal. You can have your Dexcom off if you're home with me. And anytime I tell you to check your blood sugar, you don't give me guff about it.
Mm-hmm.
So before camp started, she was home for like a week. And she was like, can I have a Dexcom break? I was like, okay, but you know the deal. So she got to the third day and I was like, check your blood sugar. And she's like, I'm like, so are you ready to put your Dexcom back on? Yeah. But I think I have to give her that break.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with her having that experience.
No, because it's like, this is a long-term thing. I mean, does it make more work for me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some things I'm willing to fight and there's some things I'm not. And it's just funny that the things that affect children are different. Like once I was asking a patient who was just burnt out and I was like, were you ever controlled? And, and she was like, well, when my mom was in charge, I did good. Then I got to high school and I had to go to the nurse to get my insulin and check my blood sugar. And I just didn't want to go. So that's where it kind of diverged for her. Mm-hmm. So one day I asked my daughter, I was like, what about your diabetes don't you like? And her thing was different than I would think so. She's like, I have to go to Nurse Brandy before lunch and I have to walk to lunch by myself. That was her concern. So I talked to the nurse goes to her now. But it was something that me and you wouldn't necessarily think as an issue.
Right.
But as a child,
it's a good idea to ask.
Yeah, so I think it's good to ask those questions. I had her see a psychologist when we were first diagnosed because I was like, I think she's doing well. But I think to have an outsider talk to her would be good. So I brought her to one that specialized in chronic diseases.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's very matter of fact. But I think it was a good idea that you brought her.
No, Angela, I think that it's possible that all of us are not exactly the way we appear to other people. So, when you're raising someone, you're going off of what you can tell about them. And you think, oh, this seems okay. You like you said, there's a very simple thing. She would have just liked to have walked to lunch with her friends. And you never would have known that had you not asked her. I have a couple of questions. Yes. First one about the untethered. You said she doesn't get a lot of basal to begin with, but how much does she get?
No, during the day. Most of hers is in the morning at night. So right now in her pump, she has most of it is actually in her pump. Oh, she gets like 30% of it with her basal for her Tresiba. I had more at one point, but she requires so little during the day that she was dropping. Mm-hmm. So like 30% of it goes with the Tresiba, and then the rest of it is through the pump.
30% of what though? What's her total basal?
Oh, her total, let's see, 3 plus, I think right now it's 10. She just went through a major growth spurt and I had to increase everything. And then now I backed off on everything because she came out of the growth spurt.
Yeah.
So during the growth spurt, she went to like almost 15. Like I increased her insulin needs by like 30%. Mm-hmm. It was terrible 3 months. and then now she's on probably what she was before the growth spurt. So I think it's about 10 total.
So Arden just announced that she's done using a birth control pill to try to help her with her problem with her period. She's like, we have to find another way to do this. I don't want to be on this birth control pill anymore. And we were like, okay, great. No problem if that's what you want. And privately, I'm like, oh, I hope she doesn't go back to these odd periods, which she very well could when we're trying to figure out other ways to deal with it. But the other part of it, I thought, oh, thank God, because her blood sugar is so much easier to deal with when she's not taking those pills. And
it was just terrible.
Yeah. It's so much more difficult on the birth control for her than it is without it. So I was like, oh, good. So she's got like 4. Like we're like, we'll just finish the pack, because that seems to be the thing you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And she's got like 5 left, and I'm just counting down. I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm so happy this is over. I don't know what's going to come of it, but this part of it was not pleasant. Okay, so she gets like 70% from her pump, about 30% from Tresiba. And then I have another question because I'm going to forget to ask you. I can't nail your accent down. I don't need you to tell me what street you live on, but where in the country are you?
Florida.
Okay. Are you from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. Florida is weird because most people are not from Florida.
Right. Yeah. That's why I wouldn't guess, because I agree with you. I think a lot of people don't live there initially, but I kind of thought that. And but I couldn't. Maybe people who know the accent are probably like, "Oh, you couldn't tell, dummy." But I was having trouble figuring it out.
And it depends on where you are in Florida. Northern Florida is more south,
right?
South Florida is different, and then there's the center. So depends on where you're from.
Gotcha. Do you have like one of those Florida man stories? Do you have one that you know personally?
Florida man stories. Well, it's just unusual things happen in Florida no, not personally, but we see it's always every time we read a story and it's like, damn it, sorry, it had to be Florida. Like that's always like, I'm like, my husband's always like, of course it is. But yeah, it's just unusual things. And I think a lot of people come here from around the world too. So a lot of times I'm like, they're not even Floridian. They're just making us look bad. But there is a lot of Floridian stories. It's just, it's an interesting place to live. We did live in Illinois for 2 years, and I do not recommend going there in the middle of winter when you're from Florida. Just FYI.
So I just Googled Florida man and nothing else. I have, this is terrible. Florida man cut wife's throat, played her favorite music as she passed. Driving while kidnapped. Florida man drives erratically to attract police. Kidnapped Florida man drove erratic. What's the next one here? Oh, Florida man who won $2 million lottery credits his pregnant sausage dog. That's interesting. Florida man attacked by alligator while playing catch near pond.
That is common. The alligator thing. I think it wasn't me personally, but around our area, I think a year ago, this poor older lady, an alligator, because she lived on a pond, came through her sliding glass door, and she felt trapped. Like she didn't know what to do. And she's like, and he ate our good wine. I guess he got her wine bottle.
Well, this is to give context. Apparently the guy that killed his wife did it because she burned his passport. That's an overreach on murdering her. Florida man arrested for allegedly distributing over $230 million of unadulterated HIV medication.
That's nice.
Florida man accused of stealing from a Hudson Valley, New York nonprofit. Now, the funny thing is that if you change this to like, I don't know, let's just pick Connecticut. Will the same thing happen? If I say Connecticut man, ready? Let's try. Oh. Not the same.
Not the same.
But yes, still, there's still stuff there. But I know that's become a joke over the years. Like, you know.
No, it is. Yeah. But people like to visit.
Listen, it's warm. What are you going to do? You got an ocean there.
It's hot though. It's hot. It's okay.
It's not the right kind of warm.
No, I mean, summer, it's bad. Actually, August is the worst here. Mm-hmm. But in the winter, we're like, hey, it's Christmas and we're swimming.
Yeah. So, I tell you, I always think that the actual indication of success is being able to live in a warm climate in the cold months and a cold climate in the warm months. So I have very small goals in life, but that's one of them.
That's a good goal.
Yeah. When you don't know, but you walk outside in that cold and you're just like,
it did. We lived in Illinois for 2 years. I got depressed.
Terrible. You're just like, why is it so cold?
Well, it was funny because when we moved up there, because my husband got a job up there, and when I started my new job, they're like, and where are you from? I'm like, Florida. And they're like, why did you move here? Because all the people had just came back from visiting Florida. I'm like,
it's a hard start when people are like, you're going to hate this. Like, oh,
well,
great.
It was like negative 35. Like we moved in November and it was like negative 35. And I'm like, and Catherine was 3 months old, and like you're stuck inside in it for months. And I remember it was April and it started snowing. And I'm like, why is this okay? Like,
I know I saw like my brother and Jenny live in Wisconsin, And sometimes you're like, how's it there? And they'll say things like, oh, it's not bad. It's like -10. And you're like, what do you mean not bad? Like, why are you there? Leave. Like, pack your things up and go somewhere else. But
there's other places you can be.
Yeah, there's houses, other places. Go get one of those. Jesus, it's -10. It's getting too cold.
It hurts your bone.
Yeah, I don't like it. All right, Angela, is there anything that we didn't talk about that we should have?
No,
We just had a nice conversation.
I think everybody's story is different.
Right.
And I think everybody's unique circumstances is different. And as you know, you've talked to enough people, and like every one of my patients is different. Every one of their stories is different. Every one of their just abilities to manage is different. And I think I like that you promote kindness, and you're very good online shutting down people that are negative.
So interesting you brought this up, Angela. I'm going to get your opinion, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So while we're recording today, I just have windows open. Like, my desk has a couple of monitors on it. I have windows open. Yeah. One's the Facebook group and everything. And this thing pops up in front of me. And this person doesn't... I'm going to give you the whole story, okay? And then you tell me what I'm going to talk to you about what I should do. So a couple of days ago, listen, I don't think it's any great surprise to people. There's a lot of content in the world, and you have to, when you're making it, you have to tell people, like, here it is, like, so they remember, even when they're subscribed and stuff like that. So I go on the Facebook group, and I actually was genuinely asking this question. I had a episode with a girl in her mid-20s who learned that she had diabetes because she had an abscess in her most delicate places. Actually, between one of her most delicate places and the other most delicate place, there was an abscess. And she ends up in the hospital for the abscess. The stories, to me, it was funny. And it was interesting because she was dating a guy for not very long, and they were only together like 4 months, and she had to basically say to him, like, I need you to, like, inspect my undercarriage and tell me what's going on and take a picture for me, right? And it just, the whole thing was just, it was ridiculous. And moral of the story is, she gets there, they give her a bunch of blood work, her blood sugar's in the 300s, and nobody at the hospital even mentions it to her. And right. And she's got diabetes in the family, and she's kind of so focused on that her butt just exploded that she's trying not to, like, she's not even paying attention. And she tells the whole story. Now, here's the thing. When she asks to come on the show, and you know this to be true, I didn't make her tell me what she was going to talk about on the show. I have no idea. I don't know what pump she uses. Does she have a CGM? I don't know her diagnosis story. I don't know what she's going to say. There was a woman on the other day who had some interesting religious beliefs that she just came out in the middle. And I was like, cool, this is what she thinks. This is what she's saying. So my point is that I didn't know that Katie was going to talk about her butt exploding. I had no idea what her story was. And so I put up this little poll, and I said, how would you feel if tomorrow's episode was titled Butthole Adjacent? Because I didn't. Have you seen that one yet in the player?
No, I didn't listen to it, but I saw the post about it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I got 25% of respondents said, I don't care. And by the way, there were about 600 votes. So it's a reasonable, like, understanding of what people think. 11% of people said, please don't. And 63% of people said they didn't care. So in my mind, 63 plus 24 is the number of people in this poll who don't give a crap. 89% of people are like, it's fine. Use the word butthole, which was really what it was about. And everybody overwhelmingly has reported back about enjoying this story. And so anyway, this message pops up under this post, and a woman who's not been in the podcast group for very long, maybe a couple of months, says this episode was such clickbait with that title. And I thought, I read that while you were talking. I was like, this whole story is about something that happened right next to her butthole. This is absolutely, like, accurate. And I'm like, but okay. She says, here's the summary. Adult goes to ER for unrelated issue, gets blood work done, has higher blood sugar. We didn't need to know why she was in the ER or the lead up to it. Now, this to me says that the talk about her intimate places made her uncomfortable or whatever. I don't know. I can't be in this person's head. What I can tell them is, if they made a podcast, it'd be very boring and nobody would like it. And it's so, but that sentence is not true. Like I think the story is about the story. And whether I believe it or not, it's how the person wanted to tell the story. She goes on and says, you didn't need or the lead up, just that surprise she has diabetes too. And she was the first to notice, but you never would have had her on if that was the story. You wanted sensationalism. And I thought, well, what an interesting hot take. So so in this person's mind, I'm assuming that I get emails all the time, and I wait for the one where the lady says, I had an abscess next to my butt. And I go, okay, well, you can come on. First of all, that's not how I do it. And secondly, no. I don't feel like I lean towards sensationalism. Actually, I stay away from it. But I was like, okay. So now my question is, do I respond to this person and say, hey, with due respect, you're making assumptions here you're not right about? Or do I just let it go?
I would ignore them, but I know you would. I don't know.
I don't feel well, though. What should I do? I feel like
because in my mind, if I respond, I won't be nice.
Oh, I'll be nice because I don't have a problem with her. I get that that's her hot take on it, but she's not right. So,
she's
I know me.
She's not right, but I don't know. Some people don't also have a sense of humor. Scott, you should know that by now.
I wonder if this might be part of the situation because listen, Angela, you go listen to that episode, and if you don't think it's interesting and funny and bizarre, you let me know. But I got done, and I went downstairs, and my wife's like, hey, what's going on? I was like, I just painted my Mona Lisa upstairs. She's like, what? I'm like, I'm never going to do better than the episode today. And she's like, why? I'm like, because this girl told like this real honest story about what happened to her, and we stayed in it for a while. 20 minutes in the beginning, something like that. I said butthole a couple of times for fun. I think it was pretty much it. But I mean, and so at one point, this poor girl in her mid-20s had to decide, am I going to show my 4-month boyfriend this problem? Right? And they decide to do it together. And, as she's talking about it, I start having questions like, how do you do it? Did you bend over the counter? Did you lay on your back? You had I need to know. And turns out she's like, I stayed on my side. I left my underwear on. I just kind of pulled it aside so he could see a little bit to get him to take a picture. Now, here's the thing. As she starts describing,
marry that guy.
It's what she said. And I said, did he grab the cheek or did you? And she goes, he did. And then she pauses and said, and then it just opened up. And I was like, oh God. And so like all I'm thinking about is this poor girl seems to like this guy. And this is the.
Well, you know what? He's sounds like a good guy. I haven't listened to their episode, but any guy that is willing to do that is.
She made that point. I made that point. I made a joke. I said, did you see him re-download his Tinder app on the drive to the hospital? And she's, and anyway, I thought it was a really delightful, honest, story and everything. And this one person, which is fine. Everybody's
don't let them ruin your day.
They're not going to ruin my day. Don't you worry. And I get that.
I think stories are good. Like when I talk to people, especially patients, I like to know them outside of their diagnosis. I think it better helps me treat them, knowing that stuff.
I agree.
Knowing their social history, knowing what they do for a living. Because sometimes you realize, oh, well, their education might, it's good to have outside context. Mm-hmm. So I think you just kind of, you give people different stories that other people can relate to. They might be like, oh, something similar happened to me. It's good to feel like you're not alone in this world. I think it's great.
I don't care that she doesn't like the episode. It's fine with me. I don't vet people and say yes or the only people I say no to are authors because they just want to come on and talk about their books and it's painfully boring. I don't like doing that. It's not, this podcast is not.
Do they try to come on a lot?
It's a non-stop deluge of people who want to come on and talk about their books.
What do they say? Hey, I got a book. Can I talk? Do they present themselves as somebody who's a listener and just happen to have a book?
No, they're usually out there trying to find places to selling a book is really hard, Angela. I had to do it once. It's not easy and it's fine, but I've done it a couple of times. It's oddly.
The only one I liked, that's how I found your podcast. Cause I read his book and I followed him. So then people mentioned you was, Sugar Surfing, Stephen Ponder.
Okay.
I liked his book.
Yeah, no, I've never read it, but I've had him on. And I also don't read, so it's not up my alley.
You don't read?
Yeah, I'm like, books. Like, you want to come on and talk about movies? I'll do that with you. I don't want to talk about books. But it's usually like, my kid was diagnosed. I wrote a children's book about this or blah, and they want to sell the book so badly that the conversation is boring and no one listens to it anyway. And it's just a waste of everybody's time. So I don't do authors as a matter of course.
Principle.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'll never will, but I don't.
Well, I think because you've been really honest about your sponsorships and stuff like that. And then if you just brought on a bunch of authors all the time, people would probably think that you're like changing the direction of your show.
I just make a podcast that I think is interesting. So, but anyway, I don't curate people's stories. I don't wait till somebody says something outlandish to have them on the show. And as a matter of fact, there's a ton of actual sensationalism in the diabetes community. And I don't lean into any of it.
You don't.
And
it's
I
nice.
could, by the way. And it would, you could say, oh, I almost died and cookie saved my life and all that, all that stuff. And I could, I could put that in a title. And to me, that would be hurtful. Like, I don't know. I put the word butthole in the title because this thing happened to her butthole. It just, and by the way, it was on her taint. And I didn't say, and I don't know if that's not a technical term, I don't think. But Angela, you're in the medical field. Does taint have is that peritoneum?
It's kind of like the peritoneum area, I'm assuming, if that's what she's alluding to.
It's the distance between the.
Yeah.
What I took from this was from somewhere between the bottom of her vagina and where her butthole is where she had the problem. So is that the peritoneum?
Yes.
Okay. You see how that wouldn't have been a fun title for the podcast episode? You know what I'm saying? So I tried to make it fun. And I also wanted people to know that the word butthole is going to come up in this episode. So if it's something you're not comfortable with.
It's not that I don't find that offensive.
2022.
At all,
Angela, you live in Florida.
I have Florida man stories.
Yeah,
so,
you've got neighbors who put meth on their cereal. You're not thrown off by people's butts. Are you right now are you picturing which neighbor I'm talking about, or are you thinking, no, I don't?
No, I was thinking about maybe not my particular neighbors, but people that I've known.
I hear you.
Yes,
I do. Anyway, I am going to very politely respond back to this person and let them know that it's okay. I don't mind if they don't like the episode, but they've made a couple assertions here that just aren't true, and I'll be clear with her. I know you're like, why would you do that? Yeah, no. Because I would. You're nicer in your response probably than I would be, but that's how I actually feel. Like, I don't have it in me anymore to be like, go to hell. Like, I just don't like, and it doesn't.
Not
get
that
anywhere,
way. I think I would just get offensive. I don't know. I would get very. I don't write well when I'm angry. So I usually have to give it 24 hours. So that's my general rule.
I'm going to stop talking to you right now, and then we're going to say goodbye privately, and then I'm going to answer her. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Angela.
You're welcome.
A huge thank you to Angela for coming on the show and sharing her story. I'd also like to thank Cozy Earth and remind you that at CozyEarth.com, you can get 35% off everything on the website by using the offer code Juicebox at checkout. And of course, thank you to the Omnipod 5, omnipod.com/Juicebox. Use my link to get started or to learn more. Don't forget to check out the private Facebook group, always free, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes, 34,000 plus members in there right now, answering questions and being supportive. It's a wonderful community. Don't take my word for it. Check it out. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.